Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Our episodes air every Friday at noon. And as you can see, we have a familiar face. Kelly has been on a previous episode, and that episode was super powerful about a state of mind and that freedom is a state of mind because she was facing at the time 16 to 20 years in federal prison. And so we went for a whole hour and we got really into that if you don't know that you're going away, it's not really so much being in prison that was so much the prison. It was the headspace, and lots of stuff happened. And I'm not gonna tell you yet the cool things that happened from what happened since then because we're gonna get into it. But wow, what she has walked through and the miracles I'm super excited to talk about, so stay tuned for that. But we're just going to, in case you didn't see the episode, we're just going to talk a little bit about, for a second, what happened and why she was arrested in the first place and where her headspace was back then that got her into recovery in the first place. So welcome back.
Yeah, hi. So I can speak a lot more freely now.
Yeah.
Which is liberating in itself, because alcoholics, addicts, we have this like constant double life. Sorry. And it was difficult because I can't be honest because it's like I legally can't be honest about what's going on, but now I can. So basically, I moved to Las Vegas in 2016, and I met a guy who was moving drugs on the dark net. And if people don't know what that means, it's just the illegal side of the internet, that is not hard to find, but you have to know how to find it. And he got me involved with three other people. And it evolved. It started out like a bunch of different drugs, but it started to only be one, which was fentanyl pressed oxys. So, we had bricks of fentanyl that they would break down into a lot of pills, and then we would sell them all over the country. In fact, there was like a heat map that was included in our memorandum, which was pretty powerful to look at.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because before my sentencing, as you know, I was asking people to write letters on my character, and a few people had wanted to have a conversation with me before they wrote it, and people that had lost loved ones, family members from fentanyl, and it was
Wow, I just
like,
got the chills.
so did I. Yeah, it was really impactful because I know me and I know my heart, and they know me, but it's interesting because my perspective shifted. So it's like I didn't realize that what talking about fentanyl would be so triggering for people,
Yeah.
and
Especially lately.
especially lately, and this is in 2016 when I got involved. Like, my co-defendant was the first time I ever heard about fentanyl. I now
Right.
It's like way
Right.
mainstream, but at the time I didn't
There
really.
wasn't enough
It
information.
wasn't, and so they had conversations with me, like, my family member or friend died, and like, I would, if I didn't know you, I'd hate you. And it was liberating for them as well because they see that, one, I'm a person,
Yeah.
and two, that I am in recovery, and that I'm not like a monster. Because when you and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I don't blame them at all.
Right.
If I had someone that I loved die from fentanyl and I wasn't in that world, I would hate the drug dealer and be like, it's your fault.
Yeah.
And even though it's people's choice to take drugs, I'm still, I'm still involved in some
Yeah.
way, and I'm not going to minimize that. But yeah, so I was arrested in December of 2019, December 5th specifically. And I had a 21 count federal indictment, and one of those counts was a mandatory 10 years in prison. But when I signed my plea in 2020, that mandatory time was taken off, and that's why I wanted to sign a plea. So from 2020 to 2023, I had been waiting for years to be
Right.
sentenced.
And I've
Years.
known you that whole time.
Yeah, you
And
have.
it's so interesting to see what you went through mentally.
Yeah.
Because there were days when you were like, all right, just sentence me already. I can't take it anymore. Like, just sentence me. If this is what I'm going to be doing, then let me move on. Let me just do it. And yet, and then there were times where you were like, you know, there are things I want to do still. And then you spent a lot of time figuring out and interviewing and listening to people who had been to federal prison and how do you do this, you know?
Yeah.
And like we were talking about makeup,
Yeah.
right? Like you look stunning. You're like a walking piece of art right now, you know? And we were talking about before the show, like how about makeup, and she was like, yeah, and in federal prison, like this is what she was like imagining she would do. She was
I'm like, how am I gonna make makeup out of like ramen noodles or whatever soap, you know, like all of this other crazy stuff.
right.
But that's not an issue
Yeah.
because on August 31st of this year of 2020 or 2023, I flew out. So do you want me to go through the whole process?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, well, they kind of know that. I mean, something great happened.
yeah,
So
a miracle. I
yeah,
mean, it's a
it
real
was
miracle.
it was a miracle. It
100%
was a whole bunch of
miracle.
miracles.
A lot.
It was a
Like,
whole bunch of miracles. But yeah, lead up to it.
yeah, so this is in my sentencing's in Cincinnati, and they opened the case specifically because there's a lot of fentanyl deaths in Cincinnati. That is still from what I understand. I don't know. Maybe it's different, but I went out early to Ohio to visit some like really you know, historic places that are based in recovery. And as soon as I got there, it was just like so many God shots, like a crazy amount, you know. And it was just, I knew that God was with me the whole time, and I felt it, you know. And so I go out early to Ohio, and then I go to Cincinnati, and you know, my number specifically is triple threes, and I'm like seeing it all over the place.
So crazy you should say that because my number's not that, but I've been seeing it lately.
You've been seeing triple
Yeah,
threes? Really?
for like weeks.
Huh.
I know.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
Like
it's
even
usually ones and twos. I never
It's
get the
been
threes so
threes?
much, but
Okay.
like the threes have been constant.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like
What does that
even
mean?
for me, I mean, like, you know, I had a
I
spiritual
looked it up and I
awakening.
don't remember what it was.
It's like a long story. Well, like the number three is like when, so one is unity. It's like source, like God, Big Bang, whatever you want to say. Two is like that split. You know, it's black, white, death, life. You know, balance. The opposite.
Okay.
And then three is when they come back together.
Okay.
You know, so
Okay.
I had a spiritual awakening
You're
back
welcome,
in,
or I'm sorry for that, for that break.
I got a big into sacred geometry because I had
I remember that. Right.
a drug-induced spiritual awakening, and you know what, God will come to you however, in whatever form, because I was like a hardcore atheist, and in 2016 when I had that awakening, it opened the door for me to understand a higher power as I understand him, but specifically three. And check it out. My co-defendant that got me involved in all this had a three tattooed on his hand. He had a tree of life tattooed on his neck. And, you know, my arrest, the address of my bottom is 333 Las Vegas Boulevard. And, you know, like butterflies have been a spiritual symbol for me for my recovery. And so my mom and I went to the Springs Reserve to see the butterfly exhibit. That address is 333 South Valley
Wow.
View. It gets weirder. Even the Hope for Prisoners address is 333.
Oh, wow.
And when I was out there at my Airbnb, I have pictures of all this. Like I'm going into the Airbnb, I turn and I look to the left, and the building next to it is 333.
Wow.
And I was texting like all the amazing God shots to my friends. I see a bus that goes by, it says 333. And then a lady walks past me, and it has the flower of life on her purse of all things, which is tattooed on my palm. I'm like, it was just like one thing after another after another.
I love that.
And the day of my sentencing, I went to a church that I found the day prior because I met some people in recovery at this church, and it was called St. Peter in Chains. And so I went to our early morning mass to kind of get my head straight. And I'm like there walking around by myself, and I see what it means. Like there's like a little thing that says what it means, and it said basically St. Peter received the church keys given to him by Christ, meaning like the lessons, the teachings, and an angel came and freed him, and he was bound in chains, and the angel came and freed him, and he escaped his jailers unscathed. And that day,
Wow.
my judge did not seem impressed by all the facts that I was in recovery, that I was doing all this stuff. He kept referring to the offense conduct.
Yes.
And mind you, my attorney said that she's never seen this judge
Right.
give probation
Yeah.
ever.
Right.
And the day before, my other co-defendant just got 18 years. And she
Oh,
told
I
me,
didn't know that.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he has to take into account what he gives my other co-defendants
Right.
to base
To
what
be
he gives up
fair.
to me. So I'm
That's so
facing
interesting.
federal prison time, which federal prison time is different than state. State, they hand out probation left and right, So when people would tell me, oh, I was facing 20 and got probation, and they told me it was a state case, I'm like, I
Right.
can't really.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. I never really heard anyone get a federal probation when
Right.
they're facing this much time. So I thought it was impossible.
Yeah, he kept. I woke up really early and I watched this whole thing. There were several of us that we were given access through Zoom, thank God, to be able to join with her and be with her in that way, and pray, and and some of them didn't turn off their microphone and video, and a little control freak in me wanted to come out, but I abstained because it wasn't about me. But but it was actually good to see all the familiar faces of the bunch of us that were doing that. And God, I was listening, and I was one of the people that wrote a letter, and I knew that there were lots of letters, and I knew that the people that wrote the letters took the time and thought, hard about what they were going to say, and it sounded to me, because the judge said he read all the letters, which of course he had to, and but it sounded to me that he appreciated that. But yeah, it also sounded that he was wanting to honor the magnitude of what the danger of fentanyl distribution has become in our world, and what an epidemic it is that needs to be minimized as fast and as hard as possible. And so this was a critical thing for him, because it wasn't just about you, and you were up against that. It wasn't just about you per se. It was the example that this case would give if he gave you too much leniency. And so because of that, you could tell and he kept saying that same word that he was,
the offense conduct.
He was saying also that this is what's like, I remember the word he was using, but something like, this is what's where he's stuck, where he was stuck. He kept going back and forth, and like you would hear, and you could tell he was listening to what people were saying. Your mother came and spoke. Her boss flew out there and spoke, but to me, what was most moving and shocking and beautiful and impressive was the prosecutor, because the prosecutor went and started off talking to the judge, saying, this is the rule, like this is the standard of what somebody who does this behavior should get, and we should honor this. However, and he has known her from her arrest, right? And so he has miraculously had enough of an open mind to witness the sincerity of what you have done to change. Because while it's true that, if you're facing prison time and you are going to any kind of 12-step or or therapy or recovery or treatment events or anything, that it's good to grab one of the sign-in sheets and go and make sure that at everything you do, there is some sort of record that you're doing it to show your sincerity, whether it's just and this is not minimizing a DUI, but whether it's a DUI or it's some altercation that you got into, or it's all the way blah 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 all the way up into some serious federal time that you're facing. It has been shown to me over the years what an impact that can make to record going to different things and doing work. But I have never before witnessed what I witnessed in that courtroom that day. It was beautiful and incredible because not only did everybody, including the judge, get to see your mom's change of how she felt about you, your employer and how he felt about you, all the letters that were written, but the prosecutor said that he has seen a change in you. And for a prosecutor to almost sound like a public defender, like almost sound like he was asking for, because and he made the point, which you hope and pray that somebody will make this point, and you don't expect it from government. You don't expect it. They're very, we've seen it once, we've seen it a million times. Don't give these people chances, yada yada yada. And then but I wanted to hear it. I was hoping to hear it, but I wasn't believing I was going to hear it until I heard it. And it was that the things that she did is the real ultimate point of what going to prison or is supposed to do. It's supposed to control or change somebody so that they're no longer a risk to other people in the community. It's meant to quarantine and to hopefully change them, but it a lot of times does it. So here you have somebody who, and he said this too. I promise you'll be able to talk again. But I was so moved by this. He said, so many people, when they're facing federal time in prison, say, there's no point in doing anything. There's no point in trying to improve. There's no point in trying to heal. There's no point. I mean, if I'm going, I'm going. And so I might as well just, have the most fun I could possibly have and just do whatever until sentencing, because of that. And it's possible, because we're not going to get into somebody else's path in this, because we're going to stick just to us here, but that other co-defendants or anything, I'm not, I could say, who knows, did not do that. But here she is, and not only have people spoken on her behalf, but the person who is least likely to speak on her behalf spoke on her behalf, and also honored the magnitude of the crime and the expectation and the responsibility of the government to prosecute and to do what needs to be done in their part to control and mitigate and hopefully shorten the curve of correction of all this. But he was so impressed, and you could tell he was.
He went harder for me than my own attorney. Like, he was more passionate.
That's beautiful.
Than my own attorney.
That's beautiful.
And that's the
Is it because he believed in you?
Well, he said it in open court. He's like, I wasn't convinced until a month ago. And he's like, I've never read a pre-sentencing report like this. And I have to really thank, my pretrial officer, her and I are very close. I spoke with her recently, and she's just an amazing woman. But, she said that they go to further lengths for people who are doing really well or doing really bad. And I was doing really well, and she wanted to make it a point of like, this is who she is. So, yeah,
God, that's so incredible.
my prosecutor is the fact that he was the one that was like really pushing for no prison time is the only reason I didn't get prison
Oh,
time.
absolutely.
Because my judge wanted to give it to me.
Absolutely.
And you can hear it.
Absolutely, because it's not just about you, it's everybody's watching him.
Well,
This is a case
it's just
too.
the offense level was so high.
Yeah.
And he kept saying it, like, I've never seen an offense level this high.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when I was sitting there and he kept saying that, I was like, I'm going to prison. You know, and
God, it was so incredible to watch this because you just didn't know, but you started to hear, and she had some, so she had also done not just not just overt work in healing from addiction. She had done an incredible amount of focus on therapy, and specifically with, you can say, sex work, and then going and diving deep into childhood stuff, and not using childhood trauma as a I hope I get out of jail with this story, but as a, oh my God, how did I end up here? How do I change this? What can I do? And then also so much work helping other people, speaking on panels, working with people. And I mean, there are people, and I've said this before, there are people that come for relief and there are people that come for recovery. And when somebody's coming for recovery, there is a fire in them and they are hungry for a change. And here you have this person who is hungry for a change, and yet she thinks she might be going to federal prison and might have to start her recovery out of prison and then take it into prison, and on a good percentage of her days was in a modicum of acceptance that God was going to use her if that was what was supposed to happen. And what an attitude. What an attitude. And to witness somebody that it's your soul just coming alive, you know, no longer, it's like no longer being pushed back and ignored. Here you had enough of a bottom for an opening for you to go and just surrender. And a lot of people just say, fuck it. But you said yes, and you wanted a change. And I watched you go through a lot to change your headspace. It was not easy at all. And like, I commend you for stepping up in your own life and doing that, because, you know, we do things in our lives that we later would never choose to do because we know better and because we are better. But when we did them, we were lost. And it's very important to understand that it happens when we're lost, so that we have the capacity to understand and forgive other people as well as ourselves. Because we are not the person who does the thing when we are lost. We are really the soul that is having a human experience that is confused, you know. And I truly believe that, because otherwise there wouldn't be so many people being able to be a new person in a new life today in recovery. And you really took to it. And what an example of, you know, yes, God doing for us what we can't do for ourselves, but also helping those who help themselves, you know, for somebody who steps up and does it and says, I understand this arrangement, God. I will meet you as far as I can go. You carry me the rest of the way. And I just got chills all over my back, all over my arms. I think that on a daily basis, that on some level, shape, or form, that whenever I feel like I can't do a thing, I have to realize that I don't have to do all of it. I just have to do my part. And it's amazing what happens, where miracles happen. People come that I never expected. You couldn't have, what happened in that courtroom was just not only were you more humanized, not only did we see your heart and your energy and your beauty, but we saw everybody's, the judges. We saw at the core of it all, why do they do what they do for a living? And you saw when the prosecutor was talking about how isn't the point for people to change and add to the community and make up for in their own way. And it's not like she's not going to do anything. What's interesting is that, so you call it sentencing? I mean, it's sentencing. What she was sentenced to in her probation was to keep doing. She has to keep doing. Like, she has to keep doing. And I think that, I don't remember if it was the judge or the prosecutor. I think it was the prosecutor. I think it was the prosecutor who said, and she'll probably welcome it. Like what? Yeah. It's like, tell her she has to go to meetings and to things. Tell her she has to continue therapy. Set how much therapy she has to do and when she has to do it. Tell her she has to stay employed in her job. Tell her she has to continue to do things for other people. Tell her she has to keep doing healing around her, the sex stuff in the past and the traumas and stuff. Tell her she has to do that. She will welcome it because this is what she has been doing. This is what she felt to do anyway. And if you're sentencing her to that, to become better and better and to help people more, I mean, I'm telling you, Kel, like, it was like, I cried, I laughed, I was like this, like, I was just like, it was so, and I tried to go in there without, like, letting go of the results, because otherwise it would have been gut-wrenching. I mean, I understand for you, like, it was quite an experience, and I kept watching you, but for people who love you and see your light and care about you, and it was so important that, we were very focused on trusting God.
Yeah.
And the people that you had come through Zoom too, like a lot of us are all those people, some of us ordained ministers and running places and clubs and whatever, psychologists, and so it's interesting.
Yeah.
And also we are the people who have bullshit detectors, and like they have bullshit detectors too, like at the court, like they try really hard to detect where the bullshit is, so that they could decide, let's take all this that you're giving us that has been done and all these testimonials and letters and stuff. Sure. But now let us use our bullshit detector, And so not just that, but like the people that you gravitated towards in your life, I like to think I'm one of them, that has one of these, because I do, like, I have a bullshit detector, And so like when somebody is that sincere, and none of us are perfect, but man, you would always say whenever you would speak, if you've had a horrible experience and you are suffering and really, really struggling, good, because maybe that will stop you and make you want to do something about it.
Yeah.
So I wish that for you. I wish you to suffer and go through that so that you have that shift, and so look at now, you're on the other side of it, of that particular thing, and the things that motivated you and helped push you, prosecutor included, what looked like somebody who was against you was actually one of the things that helped to free you the most.
Yeah, that's why that, and so he said time served and 8 years probation, so I got probation.
Yeah, well, I guess you guys realized that. Yeah. It was just so incredible.
So when I got that God shot in that church, like, I knew that angel was the prosecutor. And I wrote him a thank you letter because, and I told him that. I told him just that. I was like,
you told him about the church experience?
I did.
Oh, how beautiful.
When before I left the courtroom, he handed me a piece of paper, and it was a note, and it said, I like know it by heart now because I've read it so many times, and now it's framed in my house. But he handed me, and this is I want people to really understand, this is a federal prosecutor.
Right.
And I had one of the largest drug cases on the dark net. Like, I really want people to understand this
The
is
magnitude of
a
this.
real miracle. This is
Yeah.
a real miracle.
That people can
Like, this
change.
isn't
And
like some story. This is a real miracle.
Yes.
And I want people to hear that.
Yes.
With that said, he handed me a note and it said, if you, one, stay clean and sober, two, set positive goals and achieve them, three, obey the law, and four, be dignified in what you choose and who you are, then you can count on my support for a presidential pardon. I support you. You can do it. And he signed his name. And
God, I am covered.
And he put the date in which I could do that, which is 8 years from now. And he put the address of where I can send it. So he even told me the exact day and the exact address that I could file for application for presidential pardon. And what people, if they don't know what that means, so if you have a state felony, you can get it expunged depending on the felony and if it's been enough time. With a federal felony, it's for life, unless you get a presidential pardon. And you know what, dude? I know I'm gonna get it because I know that this is just one tick for God.
Because we're talking about 8 years from now. 8 years from now.
It's not about me. It's about the fact that this is a miracle for people to understand that, like, when you're in recovery and you make the right choices, that nothing is impossible.
Nothing.
And nothing is impossible with God. Like, and the greatest part, so that's why I know I'm gonna get it, because it's not about me. It's about, like, the fact that that could happen. And the fact that I can talk about that and give people who are absolutely hopeless hope.
Yeah.
That's my purpose, man. Yeah. And it's like, I know I'll get pardoned. I know it. And it's like, when I got probation, it just lit an even bigger fire in me to go out and do, like, great things, you know.
So amazing.
So it's like
so amazing. I love it. I love all of it.
Yeah.
That's why I was so excited. I was like, I wanted to say, hey, let's do a show again. But I was like, wait for it. She's coming down. She's like so excited.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was so incredible. Okay. At this point, we're going to take a quick break and go to commercial. Please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or are meant to replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. And see you in a bit. The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The recovery store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the recovery store and the meeting space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you who want everyone to have a place to go to heal. Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. And we were talking before the break about this miracle that happened, but so many miracles. And so now we're going to take a step back and we're going to talk about why the particular things that you did to heal you did. Like, why was it that you had that particular type of therapy? What was the situation that you had gotten into with your codependent?
Codependence.
What was the situation? Like, what was it that made you so susceptible to that being your solution? Because I know you shared, well, you shared in the court, like what the steps were that led to that. Why it was just a friend that was introducing you to a friend and stuff like that. So what led up to that, and where was your headspace in at the time when before you started to do that with him?
You mean how did I meet him? And
How you met him, why it was attractive.
well, I'll start with saying that like I was very atheist, like I was saying, and
Atheist.
sorry. And jump forward, like the greatest gift out of all this has been the fact that like my faith has never been so cemented. Like I feel like, which is the greatest gift ever, because it's like to hate religion and hate faith and then come to like know God and be like a woman with integrity that walks with God is like the greatest gift.
And if you would have thought that that's what you would end up,
I would have never in my life thought that. Like I went to church today. Like I would have never said that. Like so my whole life was like chaos when I graduated college because as alcoholics we need discipline. I thrive on discipline. When there's no parameters or structures, it's all chaos. So like when I graduated in 2012 in college, I moved to LA, and that's when I started sex work, and I was drinking, using heavily. Like it was just a very, very dark time in my life, which became too much, and I went back home to New Mexico. And there's been, ever since then, it just has been like a spiral. The spiral just looks different because I'm drinking, like the drinking and using is just so heavy, and, I started dating a guy who was very abusive in New Mexico. And when we would drink together, like he would get violent and I would get violent back. And then two of my friends were murdered a week in between each other. One of my friends was shot in the face over drugs. And then a week later, a girl that I saw at his funeral was murdered by her boyfriend, in a drunk argument. And it like scared me because he didn't mean to kill her. Like it was just one of those things where it got out of hand. It wasn't premeditated. It was just a drunk argument, which scared me because I was like,
that's why I never kept a gun. I never got a gun. I knew this could only end badly because I had anger issues and I was suicidal.
Right.
So one of us is going.
Same.
Like for both of us. And I was like, maybe I don't ever have a gun because I think I would become, because if I put my mind to it, I could be really good at something. And I feel like I could be really good at shooting.
I can see that. Yeah.
But I don't want to be really good. And then I also, just to take a second, I also had this fear because I'm super spiritually focused that maybe I would attract the situation that would ask for the gun to be used because there's this idea in my mind that I don't like wasting money and wasting time. And so if I spent the money on the gun and I spent the time on learning how to use the gun, there's a part of my mind that would be like, for what? Are you really needing it? Da, da, da. And I feel like I would manifest the situation to make it worth the time and money. I know it sounds like really woohoo, but this is how my mind works, and it's really important that you know how your mind works. And so I was like, maybe no gun. Maybe no gun. Don't really want to be without even alcohol or drugs. For a period of time, there was a real like danger of me, offing myself or getting into I had really big rage issues, huge. So that's not something I wanted at my disposal.
Yeah. So, so that made me want to move, and I did.
So wait, so when you were a kid, because we don't just go to college, and then end up becoming a sex worker, right? There were reasons I became a stripper and went into that industry. lots of them, lots of reasons. But so just to touch on it briefly, because it was some of the stuff that ended up becoming the reason why you ended up attracted to and staying in situations with people who weren't healthy and weren't going to be an advocate for your highest good. So what happened to you, if you can touch just a second on it, in your childhood that made you more
Susceptible.
susceptible?
Like my parents are great people. Like there wasn't any trauma in my family. My dad is a great man. But there wasn't like an openness. Like I didn't tell him anything because I wanted to like remain this like innocent little girl in his mind because I loved him so much. And being a woman, you're all of a sudden not a little girl, and I'm doing very adult stuff with some very adult people. And my drinking started at 12 and 13, and that's also whenever
Why would you start drinking at 12 and 13?
Because there was older men involved. And my first experience drinking, it was a blackout drunk, and some guys taking my pants down in the back of a car, and I don't know what happened, but I can assume it's. So what I'm trying to say is like I got involved as a underage person with men that are a lot older who did not respect me.
So
obviously.
Okay, I see.
So I was like I was susceptible, and that was the only idea of like love was.
And that's when you're hitting puberty.
Violent,
yeah,
abusive, narcissistic, manipulative, lying. All of the bad things was all the things that I was used to. And as an alcoholic, I have my self-esteem's non-existent. And I feel different, and I'm a people pleaser, and I'll do anything to make you happy. I'll forget my priorities. What priorities? Now it's about you. So it's
so
like
similar.
I'm like trained to be submissive.
Because yes, me too. Because that's where we find our false sense of security.
Yeah.
We're not going to be hurt then. Somebody's not going to do something to us. Somebody's not going to take something from us. And so, yeah, I'm with you, girlfriend. Okay. So now you're after college, blah, blah, blah. Now you're in the sex industry.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I got into that because I wanted to die. I was suicidal. And I had suicide attempts, but I just couldn't go to that length. And my hopes was someone else was going to do it for me.
How interesting.
That's why I got into it. Because in my mind, I remember I was downtown LA. I was drunk. I was really upset. I was like, man, the next car that pulls over and asks me if I want to get in, I'm just going to say yes and see what happens. And thank God he just was a nice person. But I specifically, I'm an emotional masochist. I hurt myself through people, places, and things.
Yes. And I love that. An emotional masochist. Yeah. That's very good.
Yeah. So it's like, I can't do it. You do it.
It's kind of like death by cop.
100%.
You're really just you can't do it yourself, so you're going to push somebody else to do it. Right. I've had it where I've had like violent sex, and that the person was choking me, and there was a total like I could die. Okay, like not. I guess this is when I'm going to go. Like there was, because I had been suicidal so much, I do have this masochistic side too because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we are, when we had that much shame and that low self-esteem, and the guilt and this idea that we're not who we are supposed to be lovable, to be seen as lovable, etc. That whole idea that's underlining the irritable, restless, and discontent of, anybody but me, anytime but now, anybody, anywhere but here. It really is, for somebody who has PTSD or like really toxic shame, it really is anybody but me. And so there's this self-fulfilling experience where we, through another person, are getting, and it's in a lot of the adult children literature. It's an inner pharmacy where you're actually gunning for a shame hit, You're
Mm-hmm.
like if I am attracted to an emotionally unavailable man so that I can have abandonment hits, you know, and then that could just keep affirming my beliefs about myself. And so there are reasons why, you know, we got into the industry we did, and we're attracted to the people we were attracted to, because while on the one hand we have like this dual track where on the one side of the track we are really trying to save ourselves and do better and protect ourselves and whatever, but this other part believes some stuff, and so the program is gonna give the results it's calling for. You know, prove that I'm unlovable, prove that I don't deserve anything. And to be completely honest, I've been working on myself for decades, and I am very well aware that there are elements of that still in place in my mind.
Yeah.
Where there's ideas that haven't been thoroughly questioned about my worth and what I can experience. And earlier when you said with God, nothing is impossible. So that's true about anything. And so when we believe that we're unlovable, we can't have this, we can't do this, you know, that we're not entitled to miracles, this is not something that could happen. Is it because we have this programming that's going to keep calling for proof of itself until we're willing to question it and say, maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Maybe I'm wrong. And what's so cool about these miracles that we get to experience by walking this walk is that we keep finding out how wrong we are.
Right.
And it helps us to be a little bit more willing to question later stories that we're running on that we catch.
Yeah.
You know, that maybe. So yeah, I mean, if you're throwing yourself into situations that, and by the way, this is not unique to somebody who goes out and has sex with somebody for money and maybe they'll kill you. I was once in an event for recovery, and there were several people. The topic was suicide, and there were several people there, and ignorantly bragging about how they've never been suicidal in their life, right? But then they subsequently talked about how they took whatever pill and they drank whatever copious amounts of alcohol and got behind the wheel. And pray tell, what is that? Yeah. You know, like if you don't have, I mean, we are meant as a species to want to put all of our energy into survival. And so if there's a part of our programming that's fighting our own survival, that by definition is suicide. It is suicidal ideas, not even full ideation, but just it is, because we have a strong case of the fuck it's in the moment, and you know what, if I die I die, you know. And it's like, so you're saying you've never been suicidal? Never been suicidal. But you did that. Yes, I did. And you don't? Okay, that's fine. Yeah. We don't have to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it's like, you know, alcoholism was a slow suicide for me. Yes. And it's like this little,
for a lot of people.
Instead of like an IV drip, it's like a suicide drip.
Yes.
Just
that has to go in your book.
Yeah. And you know, anybody who like drinks to oblivion, it's like, come on. Like there's a part
and when you know that it's toxic, when you know that it's not healthy, when you, as they say in the AA Big Book, when you can admit it is injurious, it's like, when you know maybe you have a problem and you just keep doing it, you know, then you have to know that that there's a part of you that is not fighting for your own life, that is wanting you dead. Right. You know, and I truly believe that there is a part of my consciousness that did not buy into living. It didn't buy into it. It was still questioning whether or not I should be here. Yeah. And I had been questioning whether or not I should be here since I can remember. I never fully committed to the life experience for years, because I had very strong opinions about why I thought this world sucked and why I shouldn't be part of it. And then I had very strong opinions of why I sucked and why I thought I shouldn't be here. And I'll save everybody from me. And anyway, that's really the point. In anything we're doing in this life, the more we can be fully committed to it, the better the results, right? Yeah. So if you're one foot into life and 1 foot into suicidal behavior, then you're going to have a shit show. And that's what happens. We experience that. So it's important to know this, I feel, because you hear stories about what people have done and you know your own story about what you've been through. And it's so easy to say, oh, well, at least I didn't this or whatever that. But when you understand underneath the surface what's really going on, you know that we're just confused and attracted to things that are just, we're calling for proof of itself.
Yeah.
Like if we don't heal from abuse or anything that's happened in our childhood or anything, it becomes, we then recreate it and through other people abuse ourselves. We become volunteers over and over and over again into these situations. We go from victim to volunteer, volunteer, volunteer until we take responsibility for our own healing.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because I knew when I started to grow in recovery, when my unhealthy attraction to this guy I had been hooking up with for years, like I was obsessed with this guy. I thought I was like in love with him, like he was, so amazing, so special. And when he started looking unattractive, I was like, ugh. And I was like, oh,
Exactly.
I don't
Isn't it crazy how that happens?
cool.
Where you go,
I love it.
oh my God, what was I even?
Ugh.
That's crazy.
You're so cringy. Like,
It's so crazy. Yeah.
I love the fact that I'm like attracted to men that are respectful and thoughtful and kind and honest, and it's like, and I refuse to entertain anything less than that. I mean,
you get a desire for it,
because I did have someone recently who was hella toxic, but you know what? Here's the growth. I cut them off in 4 days.
Yeah. We get shorter and shorter.
4 days craziness, and I was like, you know what? This isn't good.
I have to admit, I like somebody who's very honest and very focused on their healing and their growth and being a good person with some edge to them still.
Yeah,
I do. I like a little bad boy and my good man and kind of a thing. And so I'm in the progress, not perfection, and I'm working on it, guys. But I get it. I totally get where it's coming from too.
Yeah.
I'm awake more and more and more, and I think through the drink. Like I think through it so I don't get into it. But I'm very well aware when I'm attracted to somebody, like somebody will come into the recovery store. I told you this. Like somebody will come into the recovery store and there'll be this me, you, me, and this energy like, who are you? And who are you? And then we'll be like girl meets boy, or girl meets girl or whatever. And then all of a sudden I'll go, so how much time do you have? Because they're going to meetings and stuff. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, a month or something. And I'll be like, of course you do. Of course you have a month. And then my mind has this like out of body experience where it goes, yep, still doing it. But I'm not doing it. I'm not dating them. I'm not whatever. But it's good to have that gauge to go, God, why does that still light me up? That sucks.
Yeah, it's like that like rush again. It's like because men for me like are like a drug too, and I started seeking help for that.
Yeah, somebody just said that yesterday. She called them alcohol with legs.
Yeah, a drink with legs.
A drink with legs.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting how apparent that became when I was like new in recovery. It's just like I just was wanting to hook up with anybody, anything to take my mind out of what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
I literally, and I knew it in my head. I want to be distracted. I don't want to think about how crazy this is. And it's interesting. After my sentencing, I was like, man, I don't care about guys at all. I'm so fulfilled.
How interesting when we're in a good headspace. Like, we're full of God, and it's like
I have all the time in the world now.
How interesting.
I thought, coming up to my sentencing, it was like kind of crazy because I thought I was running out of time, and now that I know that I'm not going to prison, I'm like, yeah, being locked down in a dating relationship is so the last thing I want. Because for the first time in my life, Lisa, I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm free, man. Yeah. I don't have
and
this
you
like
value
dark
it.
cloud.
You value all of it.
Yeah.
You value it. I'm
so
how'd you meet your co-defendant?
Yeah, so I was at a bar, and I was with the guy that I was like obsessed with. I was just like, yeah, you're not attractive anymore. And his friend came into the bar, and I was being friendly and just trying to include him in conversation, but I can feel this guy getting pissed, and I don't remember driving home because I'm a blackout drinker and I black that out. But I remember like coming in through his garage, and I just remember his like arm coming around my neck, and he choked me to the point where I was like, I've been choked by men before. I don't know what it is. I just get choked by guys. But this was like different. Like I remember waking up, and I felt like I had been out for hours. I didn't even know where I was or what was going on. And I like looked down, and he choked me so hard that I like pissed myself. And I was like humiliated because never have I ever done that drunk ever. And so I started crying because I'm so humiliated, and I look at him and he's laughing at me. And it was so, at the time I was still fresh into Vegas. I didn't know anybody, had zero support system. I was still mourning the deaths of my friends and this abusive relationship that I just got out of. I just had, I had other things going on. And I called my friend in Albuquerque, who's an artist, I'm not going to mention anybody's names, but he's a really well-known artist, and I trusted him. And I told him what happened. I was like, I don't trust people in Vegas. This was what happened. And he's like, I'm going to put you in touch with my brother. He's good people. And his brother ended up being my co-defendant. And oddly enough, like me and my co-defendant bonded over the spiritual awakening that I had, because him and I, he's the addict. He's one of the worst addicts I've ever seen. I've never seen anybody use that much copious amounts of drugs and not OD and die. It's crazy. He's a real bad addict. But at the time he was taking Suboxone, so I didn't see that yet. But we bonded over like astronomy and just really deep thinking. So like he's the epitome of Jekyll and Hyde. At his best, he's the best. He'll give the shirt off his back for you. He's just positive, and little did I know he was in recovery, and like the advice he would give me, I'm like, wow, he's so wise. And I'm like, oh, you learned that in recovery. But but when he was bad, he was real bad.
How interesting. So
yeah,
I'm getting that like spiritually he was a doorway, because he was attracting you to something, to recovery, without you knowing it,
right,
by sharing all that and by being that, right? And then he was also
the
catalyst for what an interesting thing for that to happen.
We were fated to,
but that's what I feel like too. Like the experiences I've had that were some of the most impactful in my life were ones that had both that exact thing, where it was really good,
deep
and
bond,
really dangerous.
Right. And it was so interesting because when I'll probably never see him again. I don't even want to, but when we got arrested, it's like, this person that I have truly trauma bonded with. I mean, we went through some crazy shit. And we kept like coming back together. It was very, very toxic and very codependent. He manipulated the shit out of me. But I still was so deep in that delusion that like when he got arrested, and I legally can't talk to him, or else I'll go to jail. I like mourned him.
Yes, I remember this. I remember we spent a lot of time talking about that.
And it was confusing because it's like, why am I so upset over a guy that did this to me and who's put me in this position? It was very confusing.
Because of the other side of it.
Yeah, and because of the other side, the side that like was the part of him that's real, because the monster is his disease.
Yes, exactly.
The real person is so like he's one of the most unique people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And it's really sad knowing that, that I know him, and I know, like, not only, imagine this, you're such a pill addict that like you wake up and have to crush 10 oxys and put it in water just to maintain, take like a shot, 10 oxys just to maintain in the morning.
Yeah.
That bad of an addict.
Yeah.
And you're thrown into the situation where you destroyed your brother's life, and you destroyed the woman that you love's life, and your other friends who just had a baby, like destroy them. And and you're facing 20 years and you're detoxing in a jail cell and you're not getting out for probably about 15 or 20 years. Imagine that day for him. I can't even fathom. Thank God I was released. I don't know how I would have dealt with this. Because they, like me and two other people were released, and we've had this time, which was an incredible blessing to grow and, work on myself and be with my mom and wrap my head around it, which I prayed about. I was like, God, please, I can't handle this. Please let me just get out so I can just wrap my head around this. I just need to wrap my head around this. I can't even imagine just diving in. Boom, this is your life now for the next however many decades. And I know he's a good person. And I know his heart, and I know he was probably really fucked up knowing what position he has put these people in. Because he was like the mastermind. Well, he is the mastermind.
It's one of the reasons why we do drugs and we drink, is because our reality of who we think we are and what we think we're doing in our lives is too intolerable. So it's like whatever we've done to feel better and to cope becomes then part of the story of what we then have to do stuff to cope. It becomes this bigger thing where it becomes where our lives, our narrative becomes intolerable to us. And that's why we want to be anywhere but here, anybody but now, anytime but now, sorry. Anybody but ourselves. And so we do worse and worse and worse because we're more and more checked out. We our self-worth and our tolerance, our self-worth goes down, our tolerance for suffering goes up. It's like, it's crazy what the lines that we would never cross get crossed, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And so you say that like a person can from the outside world look like a monster, but there's still that person, there's still that child of God, there's still that soul who has a story that they're running that's making it impossible for them to go back to just being just okay without needing to self-medicate and to do stuff. And in an altered headspace, high on drugs, like when I was high morning, noon, and night. I made decisions about my life during those days.
Right.
That made me more so want to stay high. So I'm imagining he was doing just that. If he has to wake up and have crushed oxys, then he's going to be spending the entire day with an altered headspace, and the drug is going to decide. The trauma, the bad narrative that's building is going to decide, and that's what happens. We no longer have the power of choice in those moments. We no longer have the power of true decision in those moments. We are running on toxic thinking and drugs, altered headspaces, and we make decisions in that when we're healed, we can't fathom doing. And so if you're in a position where you think that, you would never do something, I would never do that. I would never do that. What that person said that they did, I would never do that. I used to think that. And then I had a spiritual awakening around that idea. And I realized that, what? If I had that experience and I had that programming and I was told those things and I believed those things and then I did those things and then I had that low self-esteem and I had that much regret and then I thought I'm not worth it then anyway, and I can't live like this, and that drink makes me feel better, and that drug makes me feel like I can cope, and then that I get used to, and the story's growing, and the uncomfortability's higher, and I get tolerant, I grow a tolerance for the alcohol or the drugs or the behavior, and that needs to increase, and the story increases, and that needs to increase, and the wreckage increases, and I'm avoiding people, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and how... If I had those things happen, I would have definitely been likely to do those things. Hands down, I'm fully capable, like anybody else, of killing a person, of hurting, of threatening a person, of hurting a person, of anything. I'm capable of driving under the influence and or too tired even and hurt a person, or anything. Make decisions based on self and do things that are super selfish. So thank you so much. This is it's always powerful talking to you because the truth is that you are somebody who really wants to understand, and you're real, and to share something so vulnerable, because I share like this too, and I know that there are people that are going to go, she did what? Like, why is she laughing about it? Like she was a stripper and da 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 and yada yada and sold her body and yada. But like it's like okay, because I want to give a voice to people who don't speak.
Yeah.
And I want to give hope to people who think that there isn't any. And like you, love the person, hate the disease. Recognize that if you are, if you're struggling with an addiction or behavior, or somebody who is, that there is a difference between who they are and what they're afflicted with, and who you are and what you're afflicted with. And if you take one step at a time, miracles happen. Miracles, shifts in perceptions, changes in behavior, changes in life, opportunities appear, and people that you would never expect, like the prosecutor and the judge, where you're facing 16 to 20 years in federal prison, become part of what saves you. That's the world. That's the world that we can be in when we're willing to do that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I love you so much.
I love you too.
And thank you for joining us on the Real Recovery Show. You can watch us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Amazon Fire TV. You can get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a bunch of other stuff that we're adding to the Real Recovery Show. You can go to themeetingspace.com. It's themeetingspace.com, and you can see all the updates there. All of our episodes are posted every week there from our YouTube channel. And yeah, that's it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.